This is the Soulfilled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist and an empowerment coach for women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now here is today's episode. Episode 100. Before I dive into today's episode, if you think that perfectionism has been holding you back in your business or life, or you even just struggle with some of the symptoms of perfectionism, maybe you're not even sure, go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/perfectionist. Find out the 10 signs you might be a perfectionist today. Here is today's episode. Well, welcome, sisters. Thank you for tuning in to the 100th episode of the Soulfilled Sisterhood podcast. If you have been a longtime listener, meaning over these last couple years, thank you so much for your ongoing support. And if you're brand new and tuning in, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I have been doing this podcast since, the May of, 2018 now. And so now it's going on a little over 2 years. Technically, this is like my 104th episode, but I wasn't including the bonus episodes I had done on certain topics regarding COVID, and then episode 0 when I first launched the podcast. So just want to say thank you. This is the longest podcast I've been doing. My very first one I started was Launching Your Daughter, and I did that for I think about 1.5 years. And then I took a little break, and then I wanted to pivot more into talking about introversion, highly sensitive, high achieving women, and just the things that we deal with throughout our lifetime. And I know for many HSPs, it's, the self-care, it's spirituality, it's also some business needs, things like that. And if you're on my email list, I had asked if you would give me some feedback on what possible topics I could talk about for the 100th episode. So some of those topics you had suggested. First, let me say thank you so much. Those were great suggestions. And there are some guest episodes coming up that will cover some of those suggestions. But what I wanted to do today, I kind of pivoted from my original topic I was going to talk about to actually talk about everything that is going on in our world today, the pandemic, along with Black Lives Matter, the protests going on here in the United States. I know for many highly sensitive folks that I have been talking with, there are so many emotions coming up and sometimes not sure what to do, where to go. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can take action to be part of this transformation that so needs to happen in our country, and being an ally. One of the first steps that needs to happen is educating yourselves. And in the show notes, I am going to have a couple links for you. One is called antiracismforbeginners.com. And another one is actually on Obama's website, which is obama.org, and it's called Anguish and Action. There's loads of resources on that website as well. So again, you can go out to the show notes and get that information. But we're talking about educating ourselves, not asking your Black women friends, your Black male friends, saying, hey, what do I need to know? Google it, go out there and look. There's tons of resources out there. I know back in episode 84, when I was talking about feminism with Joanne Bradshaw, we talked a little bit about women, herself and I, having white privilege because we're white. We do. And the things that, I grew up with, I definitely, grew up around prejudice and biases. And there's definitely still some areas that I'm becoming more and more aware of. And so it is about educating, meaning you're learning and unlearning things that you knew. It's looking at your confirmation biases that you have, any of those things that get in your way of being inclusive. When we pause and we educate ourselves, when we learn, when we listen without judgment, it begins to take the differences away. It begins to show each one of us our humanity and becoming allies. I know together we honestly are a much stronger country versus fighting one another. And there's so much oppression, and there has been for centuries now. And it's really time to break through the systems. And this is not going to be something that happens overnight. This transformation is what Obama even talks about on his website, about there needs to be the politics involved along with the protest, in the sense that we've got to do both things to make the changes. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think as we continue to come together, we can actually make these changes in our country and in the world to make truly this a better place to be. So, like I said, I'm going to have the resources in the show notes for you to go out and look at. And know that another thing, I was having conversations with folks, not every one of you, or myself included, is going to be in the front lines of things, meaning attending the protest. If you do, beautiful. There are so many ways to take action. And that's what I want you to know. It's not just one way is going to make the change. There's multiple ways to make a difference, to make a change, to support, women of color and men of color. There's so many things that you can do. So again, one of those ways is through protest. Another way is, by funding different nonprofits, or funding the bail funds, medical supplies, donating money or food to the food banks, volunteer, educate those around you. Some people are not going to want to actually be educated and know that. And you may end up ending some friendships or distancing yourself from relatives. So just know that as you step more up into being an ally and ending the racism in our country, there's going to be some things that probably aren't going to be smooth or easy. And even doing your own self-examination and seeing what your biases are and seeing what your privileges are and what white supremacy is. There's a lot of things that's uncomfortable. But remember, I talk so much about this in the show, that whatever you feel is a moment in time. That discomfort is just a moment in time. It's not a forever. And the more we start to look at these things that hold ourselves back in the sense of being privileged or racist, it ends up tearing everything down. And there's not freedom with that. It's oppression. It's being able to write about this, being able to speak about it is part of you stepping into really, it's again, the inclusion, but that freedom of saying, I'm going to step into what I can do to help with this change. Because I think we all can play a part in this and truly make a difference in the world and stand together and not be divided. I am also aware that I am going to misspeak sometimes, not do things correctly sometimes, and I'm willing to modify that and to learn. So as I say on the little series that I had about perfectionism, this is not about doing things perfectly. It's about being intentional and the willingness to look deep and make these changes. So that's what I'm committing to as well. If you are having loads of overwhelm regarding your emotions, like I know for me, I had to take some pauses with the news and social media because there was so much sadness that was coming up, and seeing how many had died through police violence. And I know the system is broken. I've got people I know who have police officers as their partners, and it's hard to hear, when there's their loss of life there. And it's also, it's just so hard to hear that there's needless killings, needless dying. So make sure you are also taking care of yourself. If there's just too much going on and you're like, I so want to be active and I want to do this, but you're exhausted, you're not going to do anybody any good. So make sure you are getting your rest. Make sure you're unplugging from social media and the news if you need to. Make sure you're getting, going outside and getting exercise if you can, and still staying safe in the sense of with the pandemic still going on. The self-care is as important because, again, this is the long haul. This is the long-term shift and change in our country and in our world. And if you're not taking care of yourself, what can happen is you literally will shut down, which means there's no action whatsoever. And we need you. We need you to be able to keep taking action. What I've also been contemplating regarding the podcast, because it is a platform that literally reaches all parts of the world, is I want to continue to bring on women who are in different spiritual practices and help raise awareness of what is available. I mean, I love to learn about different spiritual practices, and I'm going to be more intentional about who it is that I'm bringing on to. It's not that I wasn't intentional before. Oftentimes I get referrals from the guests that I've had on or from colleagues that I know about certain topics that I want to bring on. Or my thoughts were having some highly sensitive folks, because many HSPs are activists, meaning they go for social injustice and they're truly going for justice and equality. So I'm going to, start to ask around and look around to possibly have some of those topics on too. But the main thing really is I want to be a space where you can come together and hear different ideas, begin to, again, shift the mindsets, let go of old paradigms that truly no longer work, raise the consciousness so that we leave this world a better place than what we started, so that our generations behind us, they do not need to have all the suffering that is currently going on. And right now they're living it. And it's time to make those changes to end the injustice and to end the oppression. I think each and every one of you who is listening, you have a gift, whatever that gift may be. It's finding it and it's using it for the good in our world and putting yourself out there, being seen, taking action, and not letting perfectionism, self-doubt, or your loud inner critic, which is self-doubt or worry, get in your way in order to make those changes. Again, when we take action, anxiety and fear cannot rule our life anymore. And you're going to hear in one of my upcoming episodes, we're talking about the left and the right brain as well, where that is really the fear is held into the left side of the brain. It's also the ego that gets in the way, those old paradigms that we can listen to. I know myself, there's still some that I'm unraveling as well and letting go of. But just know that you can be part of this change. You have the ability to make a difference. You have the ability to raise that vibration to make this world more of an inclusive world versus us versus them, and the either or kind of thinking and removing oppression and racism. And I know this honestly happens in all countries and all places. But right now I'm focusing on Black Lives Matter here in the United States. So this is what I really wanted to talk about in today's episode from some of the suggestions I had received. Again, I appreciate your guys' feedback from my list. And if you're not on my list, you can go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com. And again, today's episode will be EP 100. There's lists for how you can find out more resources to becoming an ally, how you can learn more about what racism is, white privilege, white supremacy. Tons of information out there, how you can take action as well, with protest and funding, and where you can donate your time and money. And there's also a place where you can sign up 10 ways perfectionism might be impacting you. You can sign up and be on that email list. There's often things that I put in my email list. It's a weekly email list that I may or may not say on the podcast. And so that's just another way to connect with me and see some of the other things behind the scenes that are going on. So until next time, again, thank you so much for supporting the Soulfilled Sisterhood. I love hearing from you. If there is more that you want to hear from or about on this podcast, please let me know. And I really appreciate your ongoing support. And may you be safe and may you be well. Till next time, thank you for listening. Wondering if perfectionism is holding you back in your business or life? Or just maybe it's impacting all of your relationships? Well, head over to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/perfectionist and receive your 10 signs you might be a perfectionist today. Till then, take care.